everyone. Today we are going to discuss the lesson 3, which is the information processing theory. So before we formally start our lesson, we have here 3 objectives. So at the end of the lesson, we are expected to first explain the major features of the information processing theory. It is about how our brains handles information. Next is cite teaching implications derived from the theory, and last, identify teaching strategies that facilitate the storing and retrieving of information. So there, you will also learn how this theory helps teachers plan effective lessons and discover teaching strategies that help students remember and recall information more easily. So this knowledge will help you to become a more effective teacher and support your students learning better in the future. So listen. The nature of information processing. So it is developed by George A. Miller on 1956. He examines mental stage from receiving stimulus to response. So in 1956, George A. Miller developed a theory about how our mind works when we receive and respond to information. He looked at the steps our brain takes, similar to how computer works, analogous to computer processing or similar to computer processing. So we have first the encode, process, store, retrieve, and respond. So first, when we see or hear something, which is the stimulus, so stimulus is something that triggers our self to react. For example, is auditory stimulus, which is triggers our hearing. For example, is the dog is barking and the bird is chirping. So again, first when we see or hear something, our brain receives it or encodes it, which is the first step. Next, it starts processing the information, thinking about what it means. So in process, we're going to see the meaning of what we hear or the meaning of what we see or the information. So next, our brain stores important details so we can remember them later. So when needed, it retrieves this information. So finally, based on all these steps, our brain responds by acting or saying something. So in code, we are going to receive the information. In process, we are going to find the meaning of the information that we receive. Next, we are going to store it and retrieve it when needed and then respond.
Sensory memory is the state in which the stimuli sense, heard, seen, touched, smelled, tasted. A lot of stimuli at a given time. The sensory memory serves as a filter on what to focus on.
Imagine our brain like a camera. Every second, it takes so many pictures. What we see, hear, smell, touch, and taste. This is called sensory memory. But here's the thing. This memory only lasts for a second.
Trunk stated several factors that influence attention. Number 1. The meaning is given by the individual to the task or information. Example of this is a student pays more attention to a math lesson on fractions if they know it will appear in tomorrow's exam, not related to the test. Number 2. The similarity between competing tasks or sources of information. Example of this is if 2 people are talking at the same time in class and both are discussing homework, the student might get confused and struggle on focus on the teacher. Number 3. The difficulty or complexity of the task as influenced by the prior knowledge. Example of this is a student who already know basic grammar rules can focus more easily on a new English lesson, while someone without prior knowledge may find it overwhelming and lose focus. Number 4. The ability to control and sustain attention. Example, a student resists the urge to check their phone during lecture and instead stays focused on the teacher's explanation until the lesson ends.
We go to short-term memory and strategies. So if we say short-term memory, it holds information briefly, capacity of 5 to 9 bits. Meaning, it is like a small desk where you can only hold a few items at once. It keeps information active for a short period. And if you can do anything with it, it disappears. So the capacity is limited to about 5 to 9 bits of information, which is why you can only remember phone numbers for a few seconds if you don't repeat it. So under short-term memory, they have 2 strategies. So the 2 strategies are rehearsal and encoding. So to keep information from fading, you can use a few strategies. So the first one is rehearsal. If we say rehearsal, it keeps information active. Elaboration links new and existing knowledge. Meaning, it's simply repeating information over and over, like saying a phone number out loud until you can dial it. This keeps the information active in your short-term memory. So the second one is encoding. If we say encoding, it is a more effective way to remember things long-term. Instead of just repeating, you organize and connect the new information with things you already know. Think of it as putting things into the file cabinet instead of leaving them on your desk. So, under encoding, they have 4 types. So, first is hierarchies. If you say hierarchies, it involves creating a logical structure like an outline to organize information. The second one is mnemonics. These are the memory tricks like using an acronym ROIGVIV for the colors of the rainbow. So the next one is imagery, means creating a mental picture to help you remember something.
So now let's proceed to the long-term memory. So long-term memory is the storehouse of information transferred from short-term memory. So here, the information from our experiences, skills are stored here for a long time. So here, there are also classifications of the storage in our brain. So the buried context of information are stored namely first in semantic memory, episodic, procedural, and imagery. So now let's discuss what is the function of each. So first, we are going to discuss the semantic memory. So semantic memory is the memory for ideas, words, facts, and concepts that are not part of person's own experience. So ibig sabihin nito, semantic memory is help us remember information that is not specific to our personal experience. For example, knowing that Paris is the capital of France or the zebra has black and white stripes are part of semantic memory. So these are the facts we learn and remember over time, but they are not tied to a specific moment in our life. So let's proceed to the episodic memory. So episodic memory includes the memory of events that happen in person's life connected to a specific time and place. So it includes details like where we were, what we did, and when did it happen. For example, remembering your last birthday party or a family trip to a beach are the episodes stored in your episodic memory. So these memories are linked to specific times and places in your life. So we have also the procedural memory. So procedural memory accounts for the knowledge about how to do things. So procedural memory is about knowing how to do things. It covers skills and habits that we perform automatically after a practice. For example, riding a bike or cooking are the skills stored in procedural memory. So once we learn, we can do them without thinking much about each step. So imagery. So imagery refers to creating mental pictures in our mind. It helps us visualize things we know and imagine. For example, when you think of a sunny beach or imagine your favorite food, you are using mental image. Imagery makes it easier to remember or understand concepts by picturing them in your mind. So these are different types of memory work together to help us learn, remember, and do everyday tasks.
So now let's go to retrieving information. We say retrieving information, it involves locating and transferring information to short-term memory. So it means that locating information in your long-term memory and bring it back into your short-term memory so you can use it. So under retrieving information, they have 2 methods. The first one is recall and the second one is recognition. Recalling, which is either free recall or cued recall. So one way to retrieve information is through recall, where you have to remember something without any help. So free recall, the person has to rely on the information previously learned purely by memory. So when you remember something without any help or clues, that is free recall. For example, if your teacher asks you to list all the brand of phone, you can remember because you are using free recall. Second type of recall is cued recall. If you say cued recall, involves the provision of cues and clues to the person to help in the recall of the information. So, cued recall, you're given a hint or clue to help you remember the information. A common example is this: it fill in the blank question. The second method is recognition. Recognition is another way to retrieve information. It involves providing the learners with stimuli as choices to make a decision or judgment. So which is easier because you're given opinions to choose from. Think of multiple choice tests. Simply need to recognize the correct answer from the list of choices. Next is primacy and recency effect. Primacy and recency effect influence our memory and what we remember best. So we can define what is primacy and recency. We say primacy effect means we tend to remember the best item on a list better because we had more time to rehearse them. So second one is recency. If we say recency, means we remember the last item better because they are still fresh in our short-term memory. So it's clear that the difference between primacy effect and recency effect, if we say primacy, we can remember the first item of the list. And the recency, we can remember the last item better because it is still fresh in our short-term memory.
So we have forgetting. Forgetting happens when we lose information from our memory. So this can happen at any stage of a sensory, short-term, or long-term memory. For example, if we see a friend in the morning but forget their name by evening, that is forgetting. And the friend is the process that occurs when remembering certain information hampered by the presence of another information. So interference is when other information make it harder to remember what you want to recall. So interference have two types. First, the retroactive inference and the proactive inference. First is the retroactive, and the second one is proactive. So retroactive, new info hampers old recall. So ibig sabihin nun, yung new information make it difficult to remember an old information. For example, after starting a new phone number, you might forget your old number because the new one is taking up your memory. Let's proceed to proactive inference. So old information make it hard to remember new information. For example, if you learn a new password but keep recalling the old one, that is proactive inference. So the difference is, the retroactive is make it difficult to remember the old information, and the proactive is make it hard to remember a new information. So magkakasalungat sila. So now, there are also another factor that affect the loss of information in our long-term memory, which is time decay. So time decay means that over time, memories fade or become less clear if we don't use or recall them regularly. For example, if you don't practice a song, you might forget parts of it after a long time. In summary, forgetting can happen because of interference. It can be retroactive or proactive from other information, or simply because time passes without reinforcement. Another to time decay is it is related to a tik-o-tatang phenomenon, which yung sinasabi natin na nasa dulo ng dila ko pero makakalimutan natin yung information.
So, following the concepts and principles associated with IPT, Wool, Oakes, Ladin, and Shank recommend the following to be used in helping learners to understand and recall what they learned. Number 1. Get students' attention. Learning won't happen if they are distracted. Teachers should use a signal to get everyone's attention. Number 2. Use movement and variety. Students get bored if the teacher speaks in one time. Movement and gestures keep students engaged. Example, while explaining a story, the teacher walks around the room, acts out a scene. Number 3. Start with an engaging question. A good question at the start makes students curious about the lesson. Before teaching about volcanoes, the teacher asks, what would you do if you saw smoke coming from a mountain near from home? Number 4. Regain wandering attention. If a student is distracted, bring them back in a respectful way. Example, the teacher walks closer to a chatting student and asks, Maria, what do you think about this example? Like that. 5. Separate main ideas from extra details. Before a science lesson, the teacher says, the most important thing today is how plants make their food through photosynthesis, and that's the example. Students need to know what's important to remember. Number 6. Emphasize key points. Repeating and highlighting important information helps students remember. Example is, the teacher says, class is very important. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. Please highlight it in your notes. Number 7. Connect new ideas to old knowledge. Students learn better when they link new lessons to things they already know. Example, when teaching fractions, the teacher says, remember when we shared a pizza last time? That's what fractions are about. Number 8. Provide practice and review. Repetition helps information stay in memory. Example, the teacher gives a short quiz at the end of the week to review past lesson. Number 9. Be clear and organized. Lessons are easier to understand when they are structured and have a clear purpose. Example, the teacher starts by saying, today we will learn 3 types of nouns, proper, common, and collective. And lastly, number 10, focus on meaning and not memorization.